Well, it's that time. It is time for the one and only no buts about it mock draft round. Stay tuned. That's coming up next. What's up, everyone? Chus is in his basement in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am Josh Butts here with no buts about it. Full disclosure, I have a sore throat. And I just woke up like an hour ago with a sore throat. So if I sound like I'm miserable, it has nothing to do with these players. It has nothing to do with Chus. It has nothing to do with you. I am happy to be here. I'm trying my best, but that is why. So I'm a wee bit sick. So we're just going to try to power through here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I could try to give my expert opinion on a lot of these players, but unfortunately, half of what we're doing revolves around Josh speaking because he also did mock drafts. So the reasoning behind his picks, I can't really give you a reasoning. So he is going to have to power through just a tad. I'll try to do what I can to try to carry through if Josh starts having throat episodes where he can't speak or loses his voice because of laryngitis issues, which by all means, I totally understand. I have that happen more than once in my life. So
yeah, so hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm hoping to go live tomorrow for the first round of the NFL draft, and that would suck if I couldn't do that. But that being said, let's get right into it. And so how we did this was each of us did a draft for the Bengals, for the Steelers, and then we each did a first round. So, Chus, I'm going to have you explain your Bengals mock draft first, and then I'll do my Bengals mock draft.
Okay. So for some reason, I want to put on record here that my Bengals mock draft actually, according to PFF, was ranked higher than my Steelers mock draft, which I found kind of interesting. So I guess, Josh, take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I figured that might be a good instigator for how these drafts go. Now, obviously, just full disclaimer, I mean, there's a 90% chance that some of these players don't fall or don't get picked and stuff like that. But this is just based on my personal opinion. So first and foremost, in the first round for the Bengals, I had you guys draft Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Now, I know you have Jordan Battle and Geno Stone in the backfield, but I understand that you guys haven't been using Jordan Battle as much, and Geno Stone is kind of getting up there in age, if I remember correctly. Either way, I mean, it feels as if your backfield when it comes to safety is kind of struggling. And with Jordan Battle, I still think you guys have a diamond in the rough with him. But if you guys aren't going to utilize him right where you guys are picking, I feel like this would probably be a good pick for you guys. I feel like he kind of fell a little bit further than most people would imagine. I feel like he's going to be like a really good safety. So might as well, when you guys have a pretty beat up backfield and secondary, I think you guys could really utilize somebody really strong in the safety. So I think Malachi Starks would be a really good asset for you guys. So that's kind of where I came with for that.
He's also a very versatile player in the
Right.
And you'll see I didn't end up going with him, if I remember correctly, but he was someone who I heavily debated taking at that position as well. So I do really like that pick.
Right. So yeah. So, and as you can see, the PFF board had him at 8. I had him drafted at 17. So that means he kind of fell a pretty decent bit. And yeah, I think this would be a good pick for the Bengals if they went forth with it. Now, second round, I went with Omar Norman Lott, Tennessee defensive player. And the reason I went for him is, once again, kind of trying to buff up that defense. You guys already have a pretty stellar offense, but you really need to work on that defensive, like interior, your defensive line and whatnot. And this guy from Tennessee, he can be a force to be reckoned with when it comes to being in the defense. And I figured where he was placed, where you guys are at in the draft, once again, I know that some people are trying to, push for running back or whatnot, but I really think if you guys can just draft a lot of diamond in the rough stud guys on defense, I feel like you guys are going to be a serious threat. And all it takes is one or two big playmakers. And I think Omar Norman Lott would be really good on your line. So that's kind of where I came with that second round pick. I'm not sure where you kind of went with this guy, but
I went a bit of a different direction. I'm gonna actually pull up my draft over here.
You don't have to name yours because I know you're gonna have
Yeah,
your reasoning behind everything, of course. So, but
yeah, I went a
yes,
bit of a different direction.
yeah, and if I remember correctly, like where we were at in the draft as well, Omar Norman Lott had fallen in my mock draft a little bit from where he was projected. I think he had him at 34, so it would have been almost like 15, 16 picks later, since he's still quality talent. Figured bring him up to that point. Do you want me to continue forth and just keep going, or do you
Yeah,
want
just
to?
keep go all the way through. Let's see what you got.
So the next up, I picked Chris Paul Jr. out of Ole Miss. He's a linebacker. The reason I picked him is once again, trying to buff up that defense. I really think you guys really need some work on the linebackers. Not that your linebackers, once again, aren't bad, but I definitely think that you guys have been struggling a lot on the defensive measures. So a lot of this draft is a lot in the first 3 rounds defensive heavy. Obviously, 3 different positions, 3 different holes that you could probably fill in, like we did with safety, the lineman, and obviously linebacker as well. Chris Paul Jr., I feel like is kind of overlooked when it comes to linebackers in some aspects. I think from what I've read, he could be a possible landing spot for the Bengals, depending on what direction they go in. And yeah, I think Chris Paul Jr., like I said, can be another one of those playmakers that, although gets drafted in the 3rd round and nobody's kind of looking at him, could definitely be a big difference maker for you guys on defense. Now, round 4, I kind of went a little bit of a different direction. I went with guard Miles Frazier, LSU. I think this guy is going to be really, really good, especially for a team that really has a lot of issues on the line. Once again, the problem with my mock draft is obviously I went more defensive heavy than line heavy. There's obviously a lot of pieces on that line that you guys still need to figure out as well. But I think Miles Frazier, since you guys have been looking for a guard, I think that he could be a really good fourth round guy that might take a little bit of time to develop in the NFL, just because obviously he's a 4th round guy. But I think that it wouldn't take him too long to be behind one of those veteran guys, and before you know it, be a prominent starter to protect Joe Burrow in the backfield. So that's kind of the direction I went. Like I said, I know some mock drafts might have went more towards drafting more of a line than defense, but that's kind of where I was going, because as you can see in the next round, I picked Jack Kaiser out of Notre Dame, linebacker. Now this guy, if he falls to you guys, I mean, goodness gracious, I mean, this guy would be a heck of a pickup. I mean, 5th-round sleeper. This guy really caused a whole lot of damage in Notre Dame. And for him to be in the 5th round this low, I feel like is, I mean, obviously he has his issues and whatnot, but I feel like it can be slightly insulting. So I know that once again, you guys could utilize some linebackers. So if you guys even draft 2, I mean, and both of these guys pan out, you guys could have some really serious defensive threats. And I don't know how long it'll take Jack Kaiser to develop in the NFL. I mean, he looks almost NFL ready in my opinion, but it might take a little bit of time. So, but that's why I kind of went with 2 linebackers, because at that point in time, I think Kaiser had fallen pretty far. And I was like, why wouldn't you pick him up, especially considering the Bengals, would need a linebacker. Now, this is kind of where where PFF didn't like my pick, but I figured since a lot of Bengals mock drafts have been going with running backs, I figured we would go with Bishol Tootin, or yeah, I believe that's his name, from Virginia Tech. And he is obviously a running back. The thing about running backs in this draft class, if you're not familiar with doing mock drafts and whatnot, it's a very, very deep class when it comes to running backs. So the one thing that I think would benefit the Bengals is, I know Josh has been very big on Scatabo, I believe is his name.
Yeah.
And whatnot. So the thing is like, although these running backs are really good, I think that for the Bengals' sake, instead of going for somebody like him who would pan out probably really well, you could probably get away with drafting a running back in the later rounds, like around 6 or 7, because some of these guys, although it says it's a D plus, I think somebody like him could actually pan out to be really good. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, and he had, I believe, 12 or 13 touchdowns in the ACC. Once again, Power 4 or Power 5 conference. This guy, obviously lower pick compared to like Gene T or Scabado or whatever, but I think that this guy, just from watching ACC ball and whatnot, I think he could be a really good player for you guys. Very elusive, very good, just getting the ball in when needed. And yeah, I think for the Bengals, I think it would just make a lot of sense for them to not reach so far in the early rounds in like rounds 3 or 4 for a running back, but rather wait until some of the later rounds and pick up a running back then, because I feel like some of these running backs in these drafts, and unfortunately some of these running backs in my opinion aren't even going to get drafted or even see the light of day, and they're just kind of missed potential or missed opportunities. I mean, this draft when it comes to running backs is deep. So that's kind of where I was looking at it. I mean, there's a lot of good running backs that I just kind of went through, but I kind of wanted to keep the mock drafts consistent. But yeah, that's kind of my look at things. So that was my Bengals mock draft. Obviously, I don't know Bengals like you do, Josh. So you might be ripping apart my my picks here, but I know you like the first overall pick or the first round.
I really like Starks. I would not be upset at all if the Bengals drafted him. Omar Norman Lott, I don't know a whole lot about. I haven't watched a ton on him, but if I remember correctly, he's more of a run defender, and the Bengals have a ton of run defenders and like no pass defenders. So that would be my only issue with taking him, but still wouldn't be like, I guess, overly upset if we took him. Bengals do need a linebacker, especially with Jermaine Pratt wanting out. And I actually went these same 3 positions in a different order on my mock draft. I just checked. Miles Frazier is a guy I kept trying to get in the 4th round, and I was unable to do so. So I'm glad you were able to. So there is a possibility. I could not do that. And obviously, yeah, Jack Kaiser, another thing. I was kind of surprised he fell that far. I didn't think he was a day 1 starter, but a nice depth piece. The Bengals do need some depth at linebacker. And then having Al Golden be our defensive coordinator. Obviously, him and Kaiser are already very familiar with each other. Right. And then Bashil Tootin, he not familiar with him, but we do need running backs. I mean, right now we have Chase Brown and Zach Moss and Samaje Perine. Zach Moss just reworked his deal, and Samaje Perine is there. But after this season, who knows what happens? That running back room is going to be down to potentially 1 person. So need to start working on rebuilding that now. But moving over to my mock here. I made exactly 1 trade, and that's because the Bengals don't like to trade, but I needed to trade to get the guy I wanted.
Okay.
So, round 1, Walter Nolan, and he is a defensive tackle, pass rusher, big name. I've been seeing this guy get mocked even higher lately. Kind of in the last few days, I've seen him going as early as the 49ers. Name that's really picked up steam, so it'll be interesting to see where he actually falls tomorrow. But if he does fall to the Bengals, I would not be shocked at all if they get him, because the Bengals frankly just need a clear DT1. We don't have one right now, and Walter Nolan would provide that. Like I said, we need that pass rush. And so then moving into round 2, I had to trade up a little bit, and I traded away one of my 3rd round picks. I received a 3rd round pick, and I gave Houston my 49th overall pick because I could trade back to get Demetrius, but I wanted 2 guys in the 3rd round. That's what I did. Okay, that makes more sense. Anyway, I fought against every single urge I had to take Cam in the 2nd round. PFF has him going in the 2nd round. I've seen some mocks where he falls further. Athletic doesn't even have him ranked in the top 10 running backs in this class. I fought against every urge to take him in the 2nd. And I took Demetrius Knight Jr., who's just, I think he's going to come into the league and just be a day 1 guy. Not going to get talked about a whole lot. But really the only negative against him is he's sometimes a little over aggressive in his tackling, but he still has a very low missed tackle percentage. But I'd be excited to have him. Maybe calm him down a little bit as he gets older, but that could be a good pickup for the Bengals, I think. In a frankly a defense where we're missing tackles left and right, a guy with a low missed tackle percentage would be welcome. Round 3, I took Lathan Ransom, Ohio State safety, and I took him because he was the highest ranked safety at this point. I do think we do need to take a safety at some point in this draft. As Chus said, Geno Stone and Jordan Battle are there. Maybe they look better in Al Golden's scheme. They both kind of struggled last season. More so Jordan Battle because he didn't really get played. Geno Stone, just I don't know what was going on. But wanted to bring in some depth. Wanted to bring in someone to challenge both of them for that starting position. More so Geno Stone. And I think Lathan Ransom can do that. Obviously, the Ohio State connection, fans will kind of like that. And same thing with Jack Sawyer. I really like Jack Sawyer. People are a little afraid he's too much like Sam Hubbard. But when I saw him there in the second round or in the third round, I could not just like let him go. He was there. We need an edge rusher. We need a pass rusher. He's a good leader. He's an exciting player. He's fun to watch. People wanted us to take him in the second. I got him in the third. I mean, I'd say that's pretty good. If Jack Sawyer's still there in the third, take Jack Sawyer in the third. I'm all good with it. And like I said, we need a running back. We need someone. We need to start rebuilding this room because right next year we're just going to have Chase Brown. Devin Neal was right there. He was the best player available at the time. Like I said, I couldn't get Miles Frazier. He kept going earlier. I think his average draft position is like 128. For whatever reason, he kept going like 118, 117 when I was trying to get him. So I just went ahead and took Devin Neal, started rebuilding that line running back room. Jack Kaiser, Chus kind of already explained him. Plus, he's coming out of that Al Golden scheme that he's already familiar with. And then round 6, I went linebacker again. Best player available, Shamar James, out of Florida. So, again, what I'm trying to do here is just kind of just rebuild this defense. Get some players here who can provide some depth, who can challenge these guys who aren't necessarily, locked into their positions. And you might say, well, why didn't you take a cornerback then? That's a good point. Why didn't I don't know. It just didn't work out. There was never a round where I was like, okay, I need these two positions, and there's a cornerback that's better than this position. Jack Sawyer was the better player over any cornerbacks that I could take. Devin Neal was the better player over any cornerbacks I could take in round 4. So it just kind of worked out that way. Guard, there's still some guards left in free agency that we could sign, and I'm kind of hoping the Bengals go that route. Mainly Brandon Scherf is who I'm looking at. So that's why I didn't take a guard this draft, but we'll see what happens there. I'd like a mixture of mine and Chus's drafts to be the reality, though, if we're being honest. So, Chus, what did you think of your of those two?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm glad that we both kind of agreed on the Notre Dame guy. I think
Jack Kaiser.
Yeah, Jack Kaiser. I figured that he would probably be good, and I'm glad that we kind of agreed on that. I'm glad that you don't think some of my picks are too crazy when it comes to the Bengals, just because obviously, like you said, I don't really know the Bengals like the Bengals, and I guess I would probably go for the Steelers as well. But I feel like your football knowledge when it comes to a lot of these things are very, very good. So I'm genuinely curious to see what you did for the Steelers as well. But yeah, I think when you were going off with the cornerback thing, it kind of happened to me too. Whenever I was doing this mock draft, I didn't really at any point think. Obviously, I know that cornerback could be a position that you guys could fill as well, but not at any point did I see a cornerback within, reaching distance where I'm like, oh, you know what? I think he's worth it. And that's kind of, I think, where I went with the 2 linebackers as well. I think that's kind of how I went with Jack Kaiser. I think at one point I actually thought about not drafting him and it would have been a cornerback. But unfortunately, there was nothing really in the range that I was like, nothing really stuck out to me. And I felt like Kaiser really did. Like you said, definitely a depth piece. Definitely could be NFL ready, like pretty good start, like at any point here. But obviously, I think it'll take some time to develop, especially when you're in later rounds like that.
Yeah, and he's not. I don't think he's a day one ready. His coverage is pretty average, but I do think he can come in for a few plays early in his career, and he would be able to make a difference. I think you would notice his play on the field. And 2023 was his best season by far. Kind of regressed a little bit in 2024, but it wasn't awful at all. His pass rush grade was 77.8, run defense grade 86.8, and then a coverage grade of 62.9. So not awful at all. And to get that kind of play in round 5 is pretty good in my opinion. The other thing is with the cornerbacks, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but Jalen Ramsey from the Dolphins is up for trade. He's on the trade block.
Oh, that's pretty big.
He's got a pretty big contract, but Bengals have been named as a potential landing spot for him, along with I believe the Falcons and the Lions. So see who takes a swing, but that's something to watch tomorrow.
I was gonna say, what would you think about getting Ramsey? Would you feel complete? Would you feel success? Would you? I mean, obviously, if you trade some picks for him or a pick, this might screw up the positioning for the mock drafts and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it would obviously depend on what you give up for him, and then how that contract breakdown is, because he has a huge contract. He just got extended, I think, last season.
And I thought it was a good idea to trade him, but that's.
He's big money. If you get the Dolphins to take a portion of that, though, then I'd be okay with that. But I want to go ahead and move on over to the Steelers, and I have my Steelers mock draft here. So, Steelers fans, if you laugh at me, that's fine, because you know what? I kind of didn't know what I was doing after a while. Anyway, so like I said, I like Walter Nolan. I think he's a really good player on the defensive interior. I think he'll be a good pass rusher. Cam Hayward is getting older, so you kind of need to start thinking about that position. And if you're going to have that continue to be an identity of your defense, you need to continue to rebuild that. And I think Walter Nolan can be a top contributor there. Now, like I said, I'm not sure he will fall to 17, but he fell to 21 in this mock, and I said, okay, I'll take him. So Walter Nolan. And Shedeur Sanders had already been taken, so I was like, okay, I guess can't take a quarterback.
Goodbye, Shedeur.
We made it all the way to round 3, and I was like, shoot, Jackson Dart's probably already been picked up. We're going to have to go without a quarterback. But he had it then. He was still there at pick 83. Jackson Dart was still alive, and I got a D+ for it. I was so proud of this pick, and I couldn't believe PFF gave me a D+. I was so mad. I was like, look, other than him and Slater, Jackson Dart, I think you should be at least like a C. I felt like an A picking that though. Not saying he's going to be like day one ready, maybe sit a year behind Mason Rudolph, but Jackson Dart, you're more than a D+ in my heart. two Ole Miss guys right out the gate. We're heading over to Texas for round 4. We're going to get Jaden Blue, and Texas has had some big name running backs coming out lately. So we've been talking about Texas running backs like the last 4 drafts, and Jaden Blue is no exception. You guys already have your kind of big, I guess, just bell cow running back. I don't know that he's really a bell cow. Bulldozer, I guess, would be more better of a term to use in Jaylen Warren. Jaden Blue is more of an athletic guy. He's a bit quicker, and obviously need to replace Najee Harris. So getting him in round 4, not too bad. Yeah, if I do say so myself. So you're welcome, Steelers fans. I like that pick. Actually, what am I talking about? I knew exactly what I was doing the entire time. This is a great draft. This is the best draft that has ever happened in the history of Steelers drafts. You guys need some O-line help, I hear, according to my sources.
Yeah.
And you went with Miles in round 4. I took Emery in round 5. Got you some tackle help. Now, I believe are you guys pretty set at tackle?
Kind of. I mean, I feel like the thing is like a lot of our line is pretty young, so I feel like our guards are kind of better than our tackles, but our tackles, as well as like McCormick and whatnot, like center and whatnot, are just tenure, like just gonna take a little bit of time to like fully develop. But I think we'll be good with having a tackle at that
Okay.
point.
Okay. I thought you guys were pretty set at tackle too, but you know what I was thinking to myself? We're in round 5. If one of your tackles goes down, one of your guards goes down, maybe you got to move some guys around. Let's get some depth. Let's get a guy. And so I got a guy for you. And then something you're always complaining about. You never shut up about this on the show. Your secondary. And Minka's getting a little bit older. Deshaun Elliott, I don't know how you feel about him, but he doesn't necessarily like move the chains for me, so
No,
to speak.
I'd agree with
So
that.
I said, we're in round 6. Let's have some fun. You're a fan of one of the Alabama safeties in Jordan Battle. Let's get another Alabama safety in Malachi Moore in round 6. Let him learn from Minka Fitzpatrick. Let him sit. Let him really take in the what it means to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Let him learn how to get unnecessary penalties from Joey Porter Jr. And
wow. Yeah. I mean, this is some real stuff that you're giving out to Steeler fans right now. I mean, this is real. This is real.
So Malachi Moore, only 23 years old, young player who can sit for a year or two before starting. I like it. I'm not gonna lie. I think I did pretty good. And then Jackson Slater, once again in that final round, just going best player available. He's PFF Big Board 234. I took him at 229, and they gave me a C plus. They can shut up. I don't know what their algorithm. I liked my picks. This I went into this thinking like this draft wasn't very good, and I have fully convinced myself that this is the best thing that the Steelers can do.
I mean, it's definitely yeah, I definitely could see this being a possible good one. I think it'll be worth noting whenever I do mine about one of the picks too, between mine and yours. But fun fact about Malachi and Minka, they both went to Alabama, so there might be some. I mean, obviously they didn't play together because
I didn't even think about that. I'm a genius.
So I mean, it's obviously there's that point being is that they've never played together, but the point still stands is that Alabama safety, for the Steelers to draft a safety, in the 5th or 6th round, being Malachi from the University of Alabama is not out of the question, because they could be like, oh well, Minka was pretty good, he's been our starter for so many years. Having somebody like him back up Minka is not out of the question. But I don't think it's bad, but I think, like I said, I like it, honestly. I think yours arguably might even be better than mine. I like the Jackson Dart pick. Whenever I tried to get Jackson Dart, he was already off the table for some reason in the 3rd round. So I kind of went a little different of a direction. So if that gives you any spoilers, Steeler fans, I did not take a quarterback in the 1st round, but yeah, I think it was a pretty solid mock draft, in my opinion, for Steelers fans. But I will say, though, a lot of people are doing Steelers mocks, I guess, because I also did a Steelers mock, and it was also in the bottom 36% of Steelers drafts. So I don't really know too much about, what it was. I think mine might have been even a B minus. Like I said, I think this is pretty solid. I do. I think Jaden Blue, his stats don't always speak for themselves, but I think he's a good solid running back in the 4th round. He's had some solid years over in Texas. And I mean, Emory Jones falling to the round 5 for that would have been a steal. And then, the Steelers love getting random guards out of random places. So Jackson Slater from Sacramento State is not out of the question in any sort of way. I also really like Jackson Dart. D plus my butt, but like, if he's around in round 3 and you can't get Schroeder, I mean, go figure. I mean, I guess because I'm figuring the Steelers are probably going to take Sanders, but that's yeah.
Let's see what you got. I honestly, when you emailed these over, I just downloaded them. I haven't even looked at them, so I don't even know what you got.
All right, so yeah, let's take a look at mine whenever you're ready to throw it up there.
Okay,
So
there it is.
So first and foremost, we start off with the same first round pick. So Walter Nolan in my mock draft also fell to the 21st pick. And the thing is I understand that right now the Steelers, as of today, are most likely in most mocks going to Shorter Sanders is going to the Steelers. I feel like, although that would probably be fine in some aspects, if somebody like Walter Nolan falls to that point, falls almost, he's number 7 on PFF, you'd be crazy to pass him up. So that's why I didn't even kind of like look. I'm pretty sure Shorter also in my mock draft got taken too, and this guy was best available, but also kind of how you were mentioning, our biggest piece on the defensive line is Cam Hayward, and he's getting old. And I think having somebody like Walter Nolan, who at that point falls 14 places to the 21st pick, I think would be a great asset for the team. That's why I really like that first round pick. I'm glad me and you are on the same wavelength. Do I think it's going to happen tomorrow? Probably not, because like me and you have said, he's been getting mocked all over the place when it comes to top 10, top 15. I mean, this guy could literally, except for the first 5 picks, he could pretty much go almost anywhere. I mean, it's crazy. But if he falls to 21st, I mean, I feel like the Steelers would be silly, especially with Cam Hayward only gotten a couple years left. I mean, your defense, go figure, is quote unquote an elite defense, but in my opinion, they're old too. TJ Watt's up there in age. Cam Hayward's up there in age. Minka's up there in age. You got some heavy hitters that are up there in age, and you really don't have a whole lot of replacements for them, especially where Cam Hayward is. And one of the things that the Steelers struggle with is run game. So, and I think Walter Nolan can help with that as well. So this is kind of where it shifts. So round 3, kind of also went with a tackle. I really didn't feel like we really needed tackles, but I figured, I mean, why not draft a tackle in the 3rd round under the circumstances that Ozzie Trapilo was still there. I think this guy he's ACC ball, and I know that Mike Tomlin does like to lean more towards drafting some ACC players a lot of times, and I think Ozzie is a really, really good tackle. Personally, when I was drafting this, I thought about it again, and I was like, I probably shouldn't have drafted a tackle in the 3rd round. There's probably a lot of other positions we could have, picked later on, but I figured this probably wouldn't be that bad of a pick. Go figure in round 3. Like I said, is this the direction the Steelers are going to go? No, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to go with Ozzie. I just don't. I don't know what they're going to go with, but I think that both of these picks are, I think obviously if you can build up having a really good tackle and Ozzie ends up panning out, and you've got McCormick and Broderick and all these guys on your and Fayetanu and like all these guys on your line end up all panning out, like you could really have a genuinely solid O-line for whoever is coming up. So if it ends up being Shorter Sanders or Mason Rudolph or whoever it ends up being, it's not a bad thing to draft somebody in the 3rd round like Ozzie. Now, like I said, will the Steelers do it? No, most likely not. Maybe in the later rounds, kind of how like you did, Josh. I think that's probably a little bit more realistic with some of your picks with like Emory Jones. But that's kind of where I was going, because he was up there, and I was like, oh, he kind of fell a little bit. I'm going to go with him. So that's where I picked. So going into round 4, very similar to you, Josh, I picked a quarterback, and I thought, you know what? I mean, I wasn't really a big fan of picking him at this point in time in round 4, but I figured it needed to be done so that you can assert some sort of quarterback dominance. And I also got a D+ for it in grades, but I went with Quinn Ewers.
Quinn is a bag of potatoes in the pocket, so that's probably why you got the D+.
Right. I mean, the problem is like at this point in time, he was probably the best available when it came to quarterbacks. I mean, Jackson Dart and a lot of these other quarterbacks in round 3 for my mock draft were all gone. And I'm pretty sure at this point, Quinn Ewers was the best quarterback on the draft board. And I was not going to reach for Quinn Ewers. And then when I went through another round, Quinn Ewers was still there. So I was like, I might as well just draft this guy, because your quarterback depth room right now is literally Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. So although Quinn Ewers isn't, like you said, great, he could be good. I mean, or he could just be a certified backup until next year, because I personally don't think the Steelers should really go heavy on a quarterback this year. I don't. I think the Steelers should just run with Mason Rudolph and then see how next year goes, because you've got quarterbacks like Arch Manning coming up next year, as well as some other really good quarterbacks that could come out next year. And although I don't think the quarterbacks coming out this year are bad, I just don't think that they're going to be as good as some of the ones that could come out next year. But if you really want to satisfy the Steeler needs, you might as well just draft Quinn Ewers at that point in time. Like I said, I think he has some upside, but like you said, I don't think he's really that good in the pocket. But a D+ is kind of crazy in my eyes. But especially with Jackson Dart too, I feel like the PFF just wants us to draft Shorter senior. I wonder what would have happened if we drafted him. I wonder what would have happened. I wonder if we would have gotten like an A+ for it or something stupid. But moving on, kind of also same thing, Josh, kind of addressing the safety room. Craig Woodson was best available at this point in time, especially when it came to safeties. Kind of a B pick. They kind of put it at like average. He's from California, another ACC team. Like I said, Mike Tomlin loves those ACC teams, and Cal did play Pitt this year, and Cal actually had a really good showing against Pitt this year, and Pitt was, struggling in that game, especially in that first matchup that they had since Cal moved over into the ACC for football. And Craig Woodson, I would say, was a pretty good part in shutting down Holstein, who is supposed to be our generational quarterback coming out of Pitt here, and hopefully he doesn't transfer. But point being is that Craig Woodson was a really good safety, I feel like, in that game, and picking up somebody in the late, like a 5th round, something like that, would be pretty good. And I don't think it's that bad. I think Craig Woodson would be a really good in the secondary. And like you said, like I said, a lot of the players on the defense are getting old. And like you said as well, I do complain a lot about the secondary not being able to hold people like the pass and whatnot. And I think Craig Woodson would help. Like I said, I don't think he's a day one starter, but I definitely think that he could add some depth piece or eventually fill into a backup role in the event, God forbid, somebody like Minka does go down. So that's kind of where I went with Craig Woodson. This guy, I believe Stan talked about him. If I remember correctly,
Stan is a fan.
Yeah. So Kyle Monangai, I believe is his name. Yeah. He's a solid running back out of Rutgers. And I think the problem that the thing about him is it's not really a problem, but a lot of people are saying we don't necessarily need a running back, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I mean, obviously, Jaylen Warren is our next guy up, and I think the Steelers like to go with undrafted running backs, but sometimes they do draft some. So Monangai, I feel like, would be a good piece to have already drafted. And some people obviously will say this is probably not that great of a pick, but I figured if you're going to fill up that room and try to replace somebody like Najee, I feel like this guy could probably do it. And since Stan talked very highly of him, I went with him. So, or at least I believe so, because he watched a lot of Rutgers football. So I'm curious if this wasn't him, I'm curious to see what Stan thinks of this guy.
I'm pretty sure this was the right guy.
Oh, thank goodness. So lastly, this pick is round 7, 229, wide receiver out of Eastern Washington, Efton Chisholm, the 3rd. And the reason I went with him is 7th round, late round wide receiver out of Eastern Washington, kind of similar to a Cooper Kupp situation, had like 15 touchdowns, late round wide receiver pick. Steelers love to draft wide receivers, even though we don't necessarily need one. But in the event that George Pickens moves on or something like that, I feel like Efton could really have some upside, like a Puka Nacua, where like nobody's really talking about him, and then you draft him and he ends up popping off, and then you won't even need somebody like Pickens. Or if you want to utilize DK Pickens and this guy, I think it could be crazy. I think if he's around and you don't really know what to go with at that point, because like I said, the Steelers are kind of all over the place when it comes to picks, and we really have no idea. But I think that this guy, if he's around, like I don't know too many people talking about him, and that's kind of where I went with it, because it's a wide receiver, type pick where obviously there's some uncertainty with George Pickens going into the future, and then you look at like our other wide receiver room, and it's kind of like lackluster. I think that this guy could really pan out, just because it's just kind of like a weird, I don't know, it's like a gut feeling with like a Cooper Kupp situation, like also another wide receiver coming out of Eastern Washington with multi touchdowns, and I don't know. I just think there's something could be special about him. Obviously he didn't play at like the top talent schools like some of these other teams did, but yeah, I think that I think it's definitely possible that if the Steelers want to go and try to draft the wide receiver, it'd be a late round guy like him. So that's kind of where I went. obviously PFF did not like my draft grade, or did not like my my draft rank at all. Bottom 36% Steelers drafts. Like I said, I think some people are doing crazy Steeler drafts because, my goodness, like mine and yours were both in the bottom 36% of drafts, and like I didn't think this was that bad of a draft, but I don't know. I guess I'm not addressing the picks like many of the other mock drafts before me are. I think your draft that I did, or my draft for the Bengals that I did, was an A-, and then this draft grade was a B. Yeah, I mean, like A-. I drafted your top 29%. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy, but I guess I know Bengals better than I know Steelers. Isn't that
Apparently,
something?
if you guys draft a wide receiver in the 7th round out of Eastern Washington and he becomes a top wide receiver in the league, I'm gonna be livid, because that is
Really?
like the most Steelers thing
Yeah,
ever.
that's what I mean. That's kind of why I went with it. I'm like, you drafted AB in the 6th round. There's been a lot of weird wide receivers coming out of like random schools in the last couple of years, out of like these random schools and whatnot, that end up panning out to be pretty good. And I feel like Efton Chisholm could be that guy, especially since we've had some bad luck with drafting wide receivers and that felt like they were going to pan out, but then like never did. And, yeah, I mean, it would be really funny if I mean, like I said, I don't think the Steelers would do that, because I feel like they're going to save this pick for like something else, like another defensive like piece, or just another backup guy that they could utilize later on. But I think it would have been a funny type of pick, more or less, if they do with it. But hey, I don't mean to make you mad, but it definitely could happen. If the Steelers decide to do this, I'm all for it, and I kind of hope that they do, because I really want to see what this guy would be like in black and yellow.
All right. Well, I'm going to head right on over to our first round. We both did all 32 teams for a first round. We got about 19 minutes here, so I'm not going to go super in depth into each pick that I made, but just kind of go over them briefly. So, Cam Ward, Titans have pretty much all but said out loud they're drafting Cam Ward first overall to replace Will Levis. They canceled workouts with both Sanders and Travis Hunter. So, to me, that just kind of says, yep, Ward's our guy. Travis Hunter fulfills 2 needs that the Cleveland Browns need, which are cornerback and wide receiver. He claims he's going to be playing both sides of the ball in the NFL. I don't think it's going to work out, but maybe the Cleveland Browns think otherwise. Mason Graham, he is the top defensive tackle in this draft. For whatever reason, and I get Abdul Carter is fantastic. I truly do. But the Giants need defensive interior help to help with Dexter Lawrence on that inside more than they need edge help, in my opinion. And so that's why I went with Mason Graham over Abdul Carter here. Will Campbell in the fourth overall to the Patriots, because they need to protect Drake May. That's going to be a priority for them in this draft. Then Abdul Carter, he still goes top 5. Don't you worry, Penn State fans. I got you. Trayvon Walker, we don't really know what's going to happen with him, but hey, if they have Abdul Carter and he pans out, it might not matter. So Abdul Carter going to Jacksonville. Then Ashton Gianti, number 6, to the Raiders. I've seen some mocks saying they're going to take Sanders. I don't think so, because Geno Smith, they got him. He's locked down. This offense worked a lot better when Josh Jacobs was on the team, and Ashton Gianti is an easy way to replace him. Then, number 7, we have the New York Jets and Armand Membo, who is a tackle out of Missouri. And we all know Justin Fields needs a strong O-line, and we know that the New York Jets need help with their O-line. And Armand Membo is the Membo to get there. I was trying to make a pun with his name. It did not work off the top of my head. Anyway, Membo to the Jets, helping out Justin Fields there. Then Tet McMillan to the Carolina Panthers. He's a wide receiver, top wide receiver in this class. Although CBS did have a mock draft where he completely fell out of the first round. So we'll see what happens. But, Adam Thielen's getting older. Bryce Young kind of took a next step in the second half of last season. Xavier Legette looks good. I'm getting Bryce Young another weapon, see what he can do. Then we move on to the New Orleans Saints. Honestly, there's a ton of defensive players that you could probably take here, and it would make sense. But I went ahead and just gave him Jalen Walker linebacker, very, very good player in this draft, a Georgia Bulldog, and they have a great pedigree in the NFL. Walter Nolan, like I said, I want him to fall to the Bengals, but I don't think he will. He's going to the Chicago Bears. We've already talked about him quite a bit. Exciting player. San Francisco 49ers, Kelvin Banks Jr., tackle. Now, you may be saying to yourself, hey, they don't need a tackle. They need a guard, you dummy. Well, guess what? Kelvin Banks Jr. is going to be better as a guard anyway. That's why I put him there. So I'm drafting a tackle here, kicking him into guard, and I think he'll be better in the NFL as a guard anyway. Dallas Cowboys, Mike Green. Mike Green's a guy that I really like. I think he could be a disruptive player. However, he does have some off-field issues. But you know what? I don't think Jerry Jones is going to give a crap, and he'll draft him anyway. Moving on, we got the Miami Dolphins, Jade Barron. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that first name. But, Jalen Ramsey, he is on the trade block. We'll see what happens with him, but I think they're going to be looking to get some secondary help anyway. And then with Jalen Ramsey potentially moving on, Barron just made sense here. Indianapolis Colts taking Tyler Warren, and they have needed tight end help for the longest time. They're finally going to get it. I can't remember the last time the Indianapolis Colts had a tight end where I was like, yes, they have one locked in.
Eric Ebron.
I'm not counting him, man. But the Tyler Warren, the argument against him is basically like, hey, like we have all these other weapons. We have Josh Downs. We have Michael Pittman Jr. Maybe you want to throw Alec Pierce in there, and Anthony Richardson can't get the ball to them. So why are we drafting another passing weapon? Well, because he's good, frankly, So Tyler Warren to the Indianapolis Colts, I think he can help that offense out. Atlanta Falcons at 15, I've got them taking Kenneth Grant. They need a replacement for Grady Jarrett, who they lost in free agency to the Chicago Bears, who have now taken another defensive tackle in this draft in Walter Nolan. So they're loading up. But Kenneth Grant to the Atlanta Falcons, I think would be a good pickup for him. And he'd be a guy, if he fell to the Bengals, I would not be upset. He's another guy. Anyway, Jihad Campbell. This is a guy who I think he could be a really good player. He does have some injury concerns, so I could see him falling a bit further than this. He does show a lot of promise, though, as a prospect. He struggled. I think he's going to miss part of his rookie season as it's predicted now. So, like I said, he may fall a little bit, but I could see the Cardinals, taking that swing, taking that little. They need something. They need to make a move. Number 17, Bengals, Malachi Starks. Already talked about that, why I took him. Seattle Seahawks, not going to try to pronounce this guy's last name, but Donovan. They're getting an edge. Number 19, Buccaneers, James Pierce Jr., another edge. I know they need a linebacker, but Campbell was already gone in my mock here, so I went with kind of another pass rush ability player, help out that defense. And that Todd Bowles loves to blitz, so any pass rushers he can get, just that just screams Todd Bowles. Moving on, we already know that Bo Nix can play football. That has already been proven. Now let's get him some weapons that aren't named Cortland Sutton, and that's why I went after Luther Burden III out of Missouri. So that's who we're getting at number 20. Pittsburgh Steelers. He was still there. This is probably the most likely pick other than Cam Ward in this entire draft to actually come through. Shedeur Sanders, come on down to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I know that'll make Chus really happy. What more can you say? Then heading over to Los Angeles for the Chargers, we got Colston Loveland, another great tight end. Could see a few tight ends going in the second round or going in the first round this year, I think. And Will Johnson, he fell. I can't believe he fell. I didn't know where to put him. I kept seeing his name up top, and I was like, he's got to get drafted at some point. And then the Green Bay Packers came along. Jair Alexander, they've been in a will they won't they relationship with him. He's been injured quite a bit. They may just say, hey, we need a guy, and Will Johnson, you're that man. Moving on, Aaron Jones looked great for the Vikings last year. I won't lie. But you know what? He's getting older. Let's be honest. And Amarian Hampton was right there. Minnesota Vikings need a running back. Amarian Hampton, you're a Minnesota Viking. Houston Texans need offensive line help. I feel like they traded away Laramie Tunsil. I don't feel like it. They actually did it. He's a Washington Commander now. So Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, you're heading down to Houston. Gray Zabel with the LA Rams, they traded away some of their offensive linemen or cut some of their offensive linemen. They're rebuilding. They're retooling a little bit. So the Gray Zabel, you're going to be a part of that. Baltimore Ravens, they love their defensive players. They love their defensive players. And Nick, you were the top guy available, Nick Skirton. So you're going to Baltimore. Detroit Lions needed a wide receiver, apparently, according to PFF. I also saw Jameson Williams unfollowed them on Instagram, if you put any stock into that. So Emeka Egbuka is a Detroit Lion, and he will probably, go for 2,000 yards because that's how that offense works. Anyway, Shamar Stewart. Now, Shamar Stewart is a guy that if the Bengals drafted him, he would be an absolute bust. But if literally any other team drafts him, he's probably going to be a Pro Bowler. He's got a ton of potential, but he doesn't have that production. And that's why I didn't really put him as high as a lot of other people did. But Shamar Stewart, you're heading over to the Washington Commanders to help out with that pass rush. Maybe go win a Super Bowl. Congrats. Michael Williams, you are a Buffalo Bill. Josh Connerly Jr., not really familiar with you that much, but you know what? The Kansas City Chiefs, I don't really know what they need. It seems like they could draft all 7th rounders, and because they have Patrick Mahomes, they'd still go to the Super Bowl. Nothing matters. And then Matthew Golden, he's a high prospect. He fell very low, and I kept having him fall because I know he's got some off-field issues that some players are concerned about, but I could see the Eagles just like not caring and being like, hey, this is our wide receiver 3. Let's take him. So that is my first round. We'll see what happens. Probably won't happen at all because the NFL draft never goes the way we expect it to. But Chus, I'm out of breath. My throat hurts. Give me your take now.
Okay, so first and foremost, I kept the mock drafts kind of accurate with mine. So I still kept the Bengals taking Starks, and I still kept the Steelers taking Nolan. So, like I said, I know that it's probably going to end up being Shorter Sanders, but for the sake of mock draft consistency, with my other 2 mock drafts that I did, I kept, since I had full control of the entire draft, I went with, for the Bengals, Malachi Starks and Walter Nolan, which we'll get into later on. But I just kind of want to put that out there. I don't have the Steelers taking Shorter Sanders in this mock draft or my mock draft. I'm pretty sure it's still going to happen anyway, but I figured, like I said, just for consistency's sake and for everything that I said before, this is why I'm doing it this way. But for certain, the Tennessee Titans are going to pick Cam Ward with their first overall pick. Will Levis didn't end up panning out for them, it appears. So it looks like since they have the first overall pick, I mean, why wouldn't you go for a quarterback, I guess? I don't, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Cam Ward going first overall. I think that he isn't first overall talent. I think that he is obviously going to be he would be first quarterback off the board in my eyes, but I think first overall, I mean, there's so much other good talents, but I guess when you're in a situation like Tennessee and you really need a quarterback really quickly, you're going to draft the best available, and that would be Cam Ward. And it's pretty much going without saying on any freaking website that you see that Cam Ward's going to Tennessee. So Miami, Florida quarterback Cam Ward, you are going to be a Titan. Going forward with number 2, Cleveland picking Travis Hunter. I mean, you kind of were on the same page with this. The thing with Travis Hunter, I feel like, is if he is going to play both sides of the field, it encompasses both position of needs for the Cleveland Browns. Since he can play wide receiver or cornerback, Cleveland kind of needs a wide receiver, and they also need secondary as well. They kind of just need literally anything at this point. I think Cleveland is struggling. I think Travis Hunter can bring a whole new world of ball to the football to the Cleveland Browns football team, the dog pound, as you would say. So I think Travis Hunter is probably going to land himself in Cleveland, which we'll see how long that lasts. Maybe only 4 or 5 years, and then he's off somewhere else. And we'll also see if he actually ends up playing more than one position, because he does plan on playing it. But he said that if he can only play one position, that he's not going to play. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, I went with the Giants going with Abdul Carter. So kind of keeping the consistency of the top 5, actually having a Penn Stater going top 3. I think the Giants obviously could do a cool lot of different things, but the Giants already have kind of a bulked up defense. I feel like their defense, we kind of talked about this on the show, Josh, is very underrated. I think adding somebody like Abdul Carter would just make their defense even more stunning. Obviously, they still have to address certain situations on offense, but now you have Russell Wilson as your veteran who is throwing to Malik Neighbors. I feel like your offense could use some other pieces, but if you're gonna have like a decent offense, you might as well bulk up or if you're gonna have a solid offense, you might as well bulk up the defense as much as you can. Like I said, very underrated. Nobody really talks about how close some of those Giants games were last year against some of those teams, and adding somebody like Abdul Carter could really even change the game for the Giants even more. So. And obviously, we have no idea what they would draft further on in 2, 3 in the next rounds or so. But I think Abdul Carter could go to the Giants, and I think it would be pretty interesting. Next up for the Patriots, I have McMillan out of Arizona, wide receiver. I want some weapons for the Patriots. Want some offensive weapons. They kind of struggled with that last year. They've kind of been struggling with wide receivers for the last couple of years. I know one year Juju was their top wide receiver, and they've just kind of always been kind of like on the outside looking in since their glory days with Tom Brady and whatnot back in the 2010s, where you could just make Chris Hogan be the best player of all time. They've just been kind of struggling with that right now. So I think having McMillan drafted by the Patriots isn't out of the ordinary. I know your draft, Josh, had him going a little lower than that. Also, he could definitely fall to somewhere else, and I think the Patriots definitely could pick someone else, not necessarily wide receiver, but another position, because like I said, they also are another team that has a lot of holes. But if McMillan actually plays like he did in Arizona, I think he could definitely be a really solid wide receiver for somebody to be throwing to. So being Drake May. So going forward, we got Mason Graham for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, once again, I went with defensive. I went with like a lineman type position, just because I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars could really just use any type of defensive player on that line that could, rush the running back like on the run, or, the quarterback, or what that position be. I know you had Abdul Carter going there, but I think since Abdul Carter picks 3 in my mock draft, I think Mason Graham would probably be a good position. He went and played really well in Michigan. I think he would be a pretty good piece for Jacksonville, especially for a Jacksonville team that's been struggling on really all areas of the ball. Really a team that doesn't necessarily need to be struggling as much as they are. But Mason Graham, I think, would be a solid pickup, and a pick that, if Abdul Carter is not around, they would probably lean into. Now, this is kind of where ours kind of go a little drastic. Josh, you have Luther Burden going all the way up in like the 20th pick. I have him going 6th. And I know that's crazy, but the reason I have him going so quick in comparison to Ashton Genie is because I don't think the Raiders are going to go with a running back because they just signed Najee. I mean, obviously the Raiders would have a crazy combo with Najee and Genie, but I just don't think that they will, because I think that they're going to invest in Najee and just see how it goes. And if you have somebody like Luther Burden, who obviously might be a stretch, it might be like a reach in some aspects, just because he could probably more or less fall than be picked up. But
Najee signed with the Chargers.
Oh, not the Chargers. That's my bad. But either way, point being is, like, I don't think they're that's my bad. That's
I was like, you're good.
He went with the Chargers. But my point still stands, is like, I just don't think that they're going to go with a running back. I think that they're going to go with a wide receiver. I just think that they're going to want somebody more to have being thrown to him. So that just was kind of my take on it. But
sorry to live fact check you.
I actually appreciate it, because I kind of sounded like an idiot talking about Najee. I don't know why I thought Najee went to the Raiders, even though I literally knew that he didn't. So
it's Wednesday. We're all tired.
Yeah, it's been a tough look, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I definitely think that they'll go with a running back at some point, but I don't know. I went with Luther Burden, so we'll see. Anyway, 7th overall, I have the Jets taking a tackle with Will Campbell, kind of how like me and you talked, or you kind of talked about. I think that I think Justin Fields is going to need some help. I think the Jets kind of need some line build, and I think Will Campbell being a top 10 pick, it wouldn't be somebody you'd pass up being on the tackle position there. And I think that somebody like him would help, protect Justin Fields. Now, Justin Fields is known for being an improviser, scrambler type guy, so the line might not even help, but for future, if they don't hold on to Justin Fields or they don't roll with Justin Fields going forward, he's a good tackle to have on your starting line. So that's kind of where I went with the Jets. 8th, I went with the Panthers, being Mike Green, edge rusher out of Marshall. I think Carolina just kind of needs help on all aspects. And I think an edge rusher would be really beneficial for Carolina. They could go with really any position. Obviously they're not going to go with like running back or anything like that. And they're probably, all in on, Bryce Young, but I think their defense as well as a lot of their other positions really need help. So Mike Green would add like a whole new spark to that Carolina defense. And I think it might be much needed for a team that, although thought would finish a lot lower than they did, still finished, bottom 10. 9th, I went with Kenneth Grant, another defensive line guy out of Michigan. Once again, another really big defensive piece for the Saints to pick up. I think that once again, the Saints are in this like weird area where they just kind of keep finishing in like similar positions every single year. And I mean, there's really so many different angles that you could go with, but I just think that Kenneth Grant could add some life to that Saints defense, especially given all of the different age issues and whatnot with the Saints and with the struggle in this on both sides of the ball. Like I said, I think the Saints have had consistency in defense, like in some games last year in the past. But their defense hasn't always held up against some of these teams. So I think somebody like Grant would be very beneficial for them. And this is where I went with going with number 10 being the Chicago Bears, picking Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, the boy. The thing with him was we can talk about, he could go to the Saints. He could be somebody to replace Alvin Kamara with his, questionableness. I mean, he could go to the Raiders. But I could see him also falling to Chicago as well. And I think it wouldn't shock me if they went with him. I mean, I feel like Chicago kind of struggles in that aspect of running backs. I mean, I think their starters although have panned out in some aspects, I don't think they're the guys. So I think that if he falls to that point, I think Chicago would probably draft him. And then San Francisco is a team that's really interesting to me because I feel like they just were plagued with a lot of injuries last year. I think they could really just kind of bulk up their team with anybody. And I think Armand Membo could be a really good guy for the line position to help out Brock Purdy, who checked down Purdy over there to kind of keep him at bay. I think, obviously Armand is a really good tackle out of Missouri. So I think that he would be beneficial for that line for San Francisco. I think San Francisco is really not that far out of it with all things considered. I mean, I feel like, you go from being like a Super Bowl contender to falling out of it last year. I think a lot of their injuries, a lot of it was injury based. And I think that this will just be a really good pickup, and we'll see if Membo pans out. And so with Dallas, I went with the edge rusher out of Boston College that we're not even going to try to pronounce his name. He's Donovan. Yeah, I think he's a really, really good edge rusher out of Boston College. Like I said, I watched a lot of ACC ball, so I know what kind of player he is. I should probably know his last name at this point because I've watched him play before, but that's just on me. I'm just really not good with like pronouncing things, and anybody that's watches the show probably know this at this point. It's really no secret. But point being is that the Dallas Cowboys, although have pieces, they are still missing some aspects of the puzzle. And I think that Donovan on defense is going to be a really crazy good edge rusher for them. That could add new light, especially with a Dallas team that hopes to be contending at some point. If you can get Donovan a couple years to be, crazy good, I mean, and see what you do in the next couple of years and whatnot, I think Donovan could be really a guy for Dallas to pan out for. Miami, since we already have talked about Ramsey, I think they're going to draft a cornerback being Will Johnson. That being said, I think another guy out of Michigan. Look at this top 15. We have 3 Michigan players already picked. Yeah, I just think Miami's going to go with the secondary guy like Will Johnson. I think Miami's in a similar boat to Dallas. I feel like they're not that far out of it. They've got a couple pieces they just got to fix up, and that they might actually be serious, back into the seriousness of playoffs and whatnot. I mean, obviously there's some pieces and different things that they're going to have to readjust, but if they're going to go forth with removing Ramsey from the roster, I feel like they're going to end up getting somebody like Will Johnson, who strong cornerback, strong on secondary. I feel like this would be a mistake for the Dolphins to pass up, unless obviously somebody crazy like Abdul Carter falls all the way to 13. Then obviously you're not going to draft Will Johnson if you have the opportunity to draft somebody like Abdul Carter. But will somebody like him fall? Probably not. So Will Johnson, cornerback, Michigan for Miami is what I went with number 13. And Josh, number 14, we kind of are on the same page with this one. Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. Indianapolis, known to be needing a tight end. And this could be very beneficial for this Colts team that's kind of all over the place with their quarterbacks right now. And no matter what quarterback they go with or what the decision is, Tyler Warren would definitely be a threat for the Colts going forward. Now, like I said, I don't think he's going to be a Brock Bowers or anything by that measures, but I think that he is going to be a solid weapon for Indianapolis on an offense that's already like pretty decent. So we'll see how he pans out. I think he's a good pickup, and I'm glad me and you were kind of on the same page with that. Falcons, I have Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. Once again, need to bulk up that defense over in Atlanta. Still only a couple games out of making it to the big games here with the playoffs and whatnot. But I think adding somebody like Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama, very skillful player, another one of those defensive assets for the Crimson Tide going to Atlanta would be very beneficial for the team that just been kind of just trying to figure itself out. And over the next couple of years, hopefully we'll make that playoff run. And then Arizona, I went with Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas. Once again, Arizona could go a couple different directions. They actually kind of surprised me this year. I actually thought that they were going to be a lot worse than they were. But they ended up doing pretty well. I think that their secondary could be bulked up a little bit with a cornerback such as Barron. But the Cardinals could kind of go in really any direction, in my opinion, as they choose. But I think that Barron would probably be a solid pickup if they decide to go down the cornerback route. Now we're getting to the Bengals. Kind of already touched on this. Malachi Starks going safety, Georgia for Bengals. Like I said, just keeping it my mock drafts consistent. There's a good chance that this doesn't happen, but there's also a good chance that it will. I didn't really, as you can see, had any team pick a safety. So Bengals would probably be the first one to pick one. And if Malachi Starks falls to that point, you might as well pick him up. And then 18, I have Seattle with James Pierce Jr., edge rusher out of Tennessee. Like I said, really solid edge rusher out of Tennessee. Seattle's kind of like in that weird position once again, where they're kind of like going to be on the uncertainty. They've been kind of playing, questionable ball where they're kind of like on the end, they're out, they're 9-8. Now that they're bringing in Sam Darnold, and it's kind of one of those things where you're like, well, what now? What to expect, So I think for them, if they can buff up the edge, the defense with an edge rusher like James Pierce Jr., I think it'll be a solid pickup for Seattle. Tampa, same gist. I mean, they've been consistently in the playoffs every last couple of years, pretty consistently. Haven't been able to make it past some of those big games. Their offense is still really, really good, but I think their defense is still a little lacking in some aspects, but not entirely. But I think Jalen Walker, linebacker out of Georgia, would be a really good piece for the Tampa Bay to pick up, in my opinion. But once again, I think any type of defensive player could be good for Tampa, but obviously, I don't think that they're going to go wide receiver or anything like that. I don't think that that's necessary or a good idea. But I think that adding somebody like Walker to help with some of those defensive plays is going to be helpful for Tampa Bay down the road, especially if Walker ends up panning out. 20, Denver. I think me and you were kind of on the same pace with wide receiver. I have Denver drafting Egbuka out of Ohio State, wide receiver. Once again, give Bo Nix some weapons to work with, just because, I mean, obviously you're not going to want him throwing to nobody. And obviously I think Denver has some pieces to fill in, but they may play off. So obviously they're not too far off the stretch here. And having somebody like Egbuka, if he ends up panning out for them, which I think he probably will, If Bo Nix can, have a crazy connection with him, he could really, really be a superstar for Denver. And who knows where they end up, in playoffs next year. So Steelers already touched on Walter Nolan. If he falls this far, I mean, why wouldn't you pick him up? But I know it's going to be shorter Sanders, but just keeping it draft consistency. 22nd Chargers. I have them picking Colston Loveland. I think that this would be another really good weapon for the Chargers, who already have a pretty decent offense. In some aspects, I mean, obviously, they kind of have their hit or misses and whatnot with some of these players getting injured and whatnot. Looks like they're getting past it. They have Ladd McConkey, and Justin Herbert is still supposed to be that superstar X Factor guy for the Chargers. So having a really solid tight end for the Chargers and for Justin Herbert would probably be beneficial. So that's kind of where I went with that. Packers, Matthew Golden, wide receiver, Texas, definitely could use some help for Jordan Love. Matthew Golden, I think for the Packers would probably be a really good mix. I think that they definitely will be able to make the offense a little bit more explosive with Golden, in my opinion, but that's just me. So that's kind of where I was going with that. Vikings, I went with Trey Amos, cornerback out of Ole Miss. I think that Vikings need some secondary help. And I think that at this point in the draft, when you're looking at some of these late picks, you're looking at some players that could be diamond in the roughs, but also since they're later picks, they're not going to be maybe not necessarily generational, but obviously still could be. So you really can't play the guessing game here. I don't think Amos is going to be a superstar X factor, but I think he's going to be a really, really solid cornerback. And I think where the Vikings land at this point at 24th, I think that since they probably need some secondary help, I think getting Amos would probably be a decent idea. Texans, Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State. I mean, you definitely want to help your boy CJ back there. I think they definitely need some line help. They were kind of struggling with that last year. It felt like CJ Stroud was moving around all over the place, and with them, although finishing pretty very strong despite all the injuries and issues that they had, I think Josh Simmons would be a really good protector for them. And going into the Rams, similar situation. I think Kelvin Banks Jr. Tackle out of Texas. I mean, I think they could go with a lot of different directions and whatnot, just because they could rebulk up their offense. They could add some more defensive pieces. But once again, the Rams really weren't that far out of it last year either. So I think adding a tackle to help Matt Stafford out in the backfield would be very beneficial as well. So who knows? Maybe Kelvin Banks ends up being like a really, really good lineman. And for all we know, they could be in an even better spot than they were last year. Ravens, I picked Nick Scorton, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. I think that he is going to be really, really good. I actually have two edge rushers out of Texas A&M getting picked back-to-back with Shemar Stewart also getting picked by the Lions. I think both of these guys are really, really good. No one's talking about them as much because they're going to be later round edge rushers, but I think that both of them could pan out to be really, really good. I think Nick is better than Shemar, in my opinion. And I think both teams need kind of like a key edge rusher, especially Baltimore. I think they really could use the help on defense. Like I said, I don't think their team is bad in any stretch, but I definitely think that somebody that's going to apply pressure on the edge would be Nick. And I think having somebody like him on the Ravens would be very beneficial. And same thing with the Lions. I mean, the Lions, they had a great, unbelievable season last year, just fell crazy short. But I think that Shemar Stewart would be a really good pickup once again. Like I was kind of alluding to, both edge rushers out of Texas A&M were really, really good this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get picked back-to-back. 29th, Commanders went with Hampton, North Carolina, running back. I think he's a great running back. I think the Commanders have a lot of weird question marks with their running backs. Austin Eckler is up there in age. They could probably still utilize him. They've already kind of talked about moving on from Brian Robinson as well. So at that point, it's like, well, what kind of running back do you go with? I think they could probably draft one. They could go draft another one. So I think they would go with Hampton at that point in time, because I think the Commanders are in a really, really good spot. I mean, obviously at this point for the Commanders, it would just be kind of filling some of the depth holes, but I think running back would probably be a good position for them to pick at this point. Bills, Benjamin Morrison, cornerback out of Notre Dame. I think this guy is really, really good. I like Notre Dame ball. I mean, some people may disagree, but I like Notre Dame ball. I think Buffalo, although has decent secondary, I think they could be even better. And who knows, maybe they can shut down some of those players, like Benjamin Morrison can shut down some of those players that really cause the Bills havoc when it comes to playing. The 31 overall team Kansas City Chiefs, who draft Josh Connerly Jr., tackle, Oregon. My goodness, it was abysmal to watch the Super Bowl and seeing that rush just demolish. I mean, it was just brutal for any Chiefs fan to watch. And I think they need to buff up those linemen over there. So I think Josh Connerly would be a really good piece for the Chiefs. Now I think the Chiefs are in a weird spot where, although they have Mahomes and Mahomes is going to keep them consistent, they do have some weird offensive pieces that they need to fill. Defense, they're very underrated on defense, but some of those guys, I mean, it could have been a one-off. It could stay consistent, but I think their offense really needs to be focused on. So Josh Connerly Jr., tackle, Oregon. And then the Eagles, I have picking Michael Williams, edge rusher out of Georgia. I think with the Eagles losing a lot of their defensive players from last year, they're going to have to start rebuilding their once stellar defense. And I think it could start with Michael Williams. I don't know how this guy's going to be. I think that he could probably also be taken in like the early to mid second round. So he could be more on the second round talent, but I think the Eagles kind of reach for him to try to, move forward with the rushing, So I don't know. It was kind of hard for me to pick some of these because, like I said, I don't have as much in depth as you do when it comes to this stuff, Josh. I just kind of I know Steelers ball, and even then, I guess PFF doesn't believe that I know Steelers ball. Some teams I know better than others, obviously. So whenever I'm kind of rambling about like, oh yeah, this player's not bad, or this player can help this team, it's not because I don't know these teams or know these players. I do know them, but I don't know what's going to be the most or like the best for these teams. Only the teams are going to know what's best for the teams, and I guess we'll find out what the teams. Well, yeah, I guess you're a good point. Yeah, teams don't always know what's best, so we'll kind of see. We'll kind of see how it goes, and we'll kind of hope for the best, I guess. So yeah, like I said, I apologize for that blunder. I don't know. I guess I think I initially thought he was going to go to the Raiders. I think that was the rumor, and then he went to a loss, even though it's Las Vegas and Los Angeles are different. I just in my head at that moment in time, I just thought it was Najee for the Raiders, but I think the Raiders could pick a running back, but I don't know what direction they're going to go either.
Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Hopefully, you will be able to join us. I hope I've powered through. I made it the full hour and 18 minutes. I took a sick day off work during the video too. So
that's fire. Are you doing that tomorrow? I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I might see you guys tomorrow. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. I really do. But just in case, I apologize. But we'll keep you up to date. We'll keep you up to date on what's going on one way or the other. But to stay up to date on everything that Know What's About It is doing, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate it so much. We have some exciting things coming soon, including some merch and possibly some former NFL player interviews too that are in the kind of tunnel of progression, I guess. But anyway, until next time, go do something nice for someone.